It's 7 a.m. You open your banking app, same balance as yesterday, no warning, no alert, no deduction line. And yet, something was taken from you overnight, not by a hacker, not by a scammer, not by a thief in a hoodie, by the system itself. This is the strange part. If someone reached into your account and stole 5% of your money, you'd call the police. If your employer quietly cut your salary by 5%, you'd quit. If the government announced a new 5% tax, there would be protests. But when this tax hits, nobody sends a bill, nobody explains it, and most people don't even realize it happened. Yet over time, it drains more wealth than almost any tax in history. This is the invisible tax that slowly takes your savings. And right now, it's accelerating. Let's start with a simple scene. You work, you save, you're responsible. You don't blow money on nonsense. You leave some cash in the bank just to be safe. That money feels solid, real, stable, until one day you notice something strange. Groceries cost more, rent jumped again. The same meal is smaller, the same product feels cheaper, flimsier, thinner. But your savings number didn't change. So what happened? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Your money didn't move. The world around it did. Money is not value. Money is a claim on value. And the invisible tax works by quietly shrinking that claim. To understand how this happens, we need to talk about something most people misunderstand. Inflation is not prices going up. That's the symptom, not the cause. Inflation is what happens when money becomes easier to create than the things it buys. Imagine a tiny island. 10 people live there. They fish, they build, they trade. There are exactly 100 coins on the island. Everyone knows it. If you have 10 coins, you own 10% of all the money. Simple. Now one day, the island leader says, "We need to stimulate the economy." So he creates 100 new coins. Nobody's coins were taken. Nobody's balance went down. But now there are 200 coins chasing the same fish, the same houses, the same labor. Your 10 coins didn't disappear. They were diluted. That dilution is the invisible tax. No vote, no announcement, just math. In the real world, this process is dressed up with nicer words. Quantitative easing, liquidity support, emergency stimulus, economic stability, but underneath the mechanism is the same. More money, same stuff, and the bill is paid quietly by savers. This matters right now because we are living through one of the most aggressive money creation periods in human history. After 2008, central banks promised they had things under control. After 2020, they stopped pretending. Trillions were created in months, not years, months. And again, nobody knocked on your door, but the tax still applied. Here's where the story gets more uncomfortable. This tax doesn't hit everyone equally. If you earn wages, you feel it last. Your paycheck adjusts slowly. Sometimes never. If you hold cash, you feel it constantly. Every price change is a reminder. But if you own assets, stocks, real estate, businesses, you often benefit. Because when money is diluted, hard assets float upward. Same house, bigger price, same company, higher valuation. So the invisible tax quietly transfers wealth from people who save money to people who own things. That's not an accident, it's a feature. Let's slow this down and look at the math people don't like to talk about. If inflation averages 2% a year, your money loses half its purchasing power in about 35 years. That's the official optimistic version. At 5% inflation, it takes about 14 years. At 8%, less than a decade. No crash, no crisis headline. Just erosion, the quiet kind. This is why your grandparents could buy a house on one income. This is why saving used to work. And this is why it doesn't feel like it does anymore. Because money itself changed. For most of human history, money was hard to create. Gold didn't care who was in charge. You couldn't print it. You had to dig it up. That friction mattered. When money is hard, saving is rewarded. When money is easy, spending and borrowing are rewarded. In 1971, that friction was removed. Money became elastic, governments gained flexibility, central banks gained power, and savers took on a role they never agreed to. They became the shock absorbers. Every time there's a crisis, the same trade is made. Stability now, purchasing power later. The hype says this keeps the system running, that inflation is manageable, that it's temporary. Reality is messier. Inflation doesn't need to be dramatic to be devastating. It just needs to be persistent. A slow leak beats a sudden explosion. There's a dark irony here. The people most affected by inflation are often the ones doing the right thing. They're not speculating. They're not chasing returns. They're just trying not to lose. And yet they're the ones paying. Meanwhile, debt gets easier. When money loses value, debts shrink in real terms. That's great if you owe money. Not great if you saved it. Inflation quietly rewards borrowers and punishes lenders, which explains something curious. Why governments love a little inflation? It reduces the real burden of their debt. No default, no hard decisions. Just time. The invisible tax is politically efficient. No vote required. No protests. Just confusion. People blame corporations. They blame immigrants. They blame supply chains. Rarely the money itself. Zoom out and the implications get bigger. When people lose trust in money, behavior changes. They rush to spend. They speculate. They hoard assets. They stop thinking long-term. That's when bubbles form. That's when inequality widens. That's when the system feels rigged, even if no single villain can be named. And here's the final uncomfortable thought. If inflation is an invisible tax, who sets the rate? Not you, not voters. A small group of institutions deciding how much dilution is acceptable. Sometimes they get it right, sometimes they don't. And once the process starts, it's very hard to stop without pain. Higher rates break things, lower rates fuel the fire. There is no clean exit. So the real question isn't whether the invisible tax exists. It does. The question is this: how much of your future purchasing power are you willing to quietly surrender for the promise of stability today? And if money keeps getting easier to create, what exactly are you saving for?